Hi, I'm Paula DeSilva, class of, yay, 1968, and I graduated with a degree in child study and special ed. I'm the oldest girl of 6 children, and there was always something to do to help out at home. And we always had jobs, and I was a Girl Scout, so that helping each other, I guess, was instilled in us young. I was asked to come to a sew-a-thon at St. Anne's Church in Avon. I helped set up that particular day, and the coordinator at the end of the day said, "You look like you're really organized." And I said, "I try to be." She said, "Would you mind taking this over because I'm moving to Virginia next week?" I think we're put on this earth to do something and leave the earth a better place. And I've always thought that, and it just kind of was an opportunity, and I kind of didn't know how to say no. My mom called me Calamity Jane, and my dad referred to me as Maria in The Sound of Music, a flibbertigibbet, but a will-o'-the-wisp clown. So I went to an all-girls high school and had lots of friends, and we went to mixers with boys, so being Catholic and being all girls wasn't restrictive at all. It was exciting to, get out of high school and come to college and not be in the same town as your parents and grow a little bit. When children now look at colleges, I think they do a lot of research. I don't remember researching college. I remember going to 3 Catholic girls' colleges, and I don't know how I got there except in the car with my parents. And we came here, and the tour was given to us by Sister Consolata, and that sealed the deal for my parents. But I don't know that I knew a lot more about the school when I was driving in. We were just looking for a place to keep Paula on the straight and narrow. Not 100% it worked, but here I was, and from here I studied. I went to classes, and I worked, and I was in clubs, and I sang, and I babysit in West Hartford. So classwork and homework didn't start until most of my roommates and hallmates were in bed. And it was often that I would be typing on a very manual, very old, clunky typewriter at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. People down the hall would come in and use their ladies' room, and I was working on a paper that was due that morning. That was often. When I enrolled here, I wanted to be a math teacher. I love mathematics. But in my sophomore year, they were building the Jenga Center, and I was in Rosary Hall that year, and downstairs there were young children who were at that time classified as trainable. They did not have speech for the most part and needed help eating, etc. So I would go there at lunchtime or break time to help out as much as I could. And I would usually leave there in tears, feeling very sorry for these kids. And then I realized I wouldn't be able to teach them if I felt sorry. So I gradually changed my major from math to education and special ed. I didn't know how to help them because I hadn't had any experience before or exposure or training in that at all. But I did leave there every day just crying for them because they were so cute and they couldn't do what kids usually do, and they weren't allowed in public education at that time. The law prevented them from going to public school. So that's why St. Joe's started this program. They were building the Jenga Center, and that opened, I think, in '65, so I had only been here a short while. And I remember the night before the official opening, we were all cleaning the Jenga Center, making it ready for the bishop to come in and the blessing. It was very, very exciting to be part of that. I worked part-time because I had planned to go on for my master's. And I got my master's that particular year with a fellowship, a scholarship, which prevented me from working a full-time job. I was not allowed to. That was kind of the agreement with the school. I went to Southern State University for my master's, and you weren't allowed to have a full-time job while you were going to school full-time. So to make things easy, I had 2 part-time jobs. One in Bridgeport and one in Milford. And I went to school in New Haven, so it was more complicated than having a full-time job. While I was getting my master's, I taught in Milford in the morning. I taught children who were learning disabled. And back then, there were no classes. So I taught in 3 different schools. I was an itinerant teacher. And I had these youngsters who were taken out of class when they were pretty much 1st to 5th grade. And I taught in the hallway, I taught in the boiler room, I taught wherever there was a place to teach, because there was really no place to teach, and they weren't a priority in school systems then. And the realization that came to me then, and I still tell people this, is I found the difference between the 2nd and 3rd graders. The 3rd graders who had a learning disability knew they were failing. So this is an 8-year-old who acts out and gets sent to the principal's office because they'd rather be there than trying to read, or a child that's so withdrawn because they don't want you to notice they're in the classroom. And I still say that today. If children don't learn to read well by the time they're in 3rd grade, they struggle in 4th and 5th and 6th. So early education is very important. I worked in Woodbridge in a resource room, which was very supportive for kids, but they were, again, excluded from the class. They came to a resource room and then went back. I started my 6th year. I got married. I had a baby on Sunday, but I didn't want to miss my next class, so she came with me on Thursday. And then I got a job at the Department of Mental Retardation, and I was in charge of 14 towns for children who were excluded. The program was really based mostly on school-age kids, 5 to 18, who were non-ambulatory and nonverbal. But there were a lot of children who were being born with Down syndrome, both in East Hartford and in Enfield. For what reason, I don't know. And they were excluded from public education. And I thought, this isn't right. So I started the first children's infant stimulation program, perhaps in the state, but certainly in that area, and got funding for a teacher to work with the children in their home, to teach the parents, and eventually got them to come to a building and get some early education. What's next is I was still going to classes and working on my Ph.D. and took my final comprehensive exam the day before baby 2 came along. That I did go back to school. I went back to Department of Retardation again, and had all these young children who some parents didn't have a lot of funds, so I got a grant through the library at the state library and formed the first toy lending library, I think, in the country, where parents could come and pick up challenging toys for their children and then return them when they didn't need them any longer to work on their fine motor, etc. So that was pretty exciting. It was the day after Christmas, and my husband's relatives were with us, and my husband is from Sri Lanka. Now tsunami's in everyone's vocabulary, but then it was not. And my husband decided to go to do what he could to help out. My husband is a physician, he's a pediatrician. He worked in neonatology at St. Francis Hospital, and he decided he simply had to go. And the TV stations, ABC, CBS, and NBC, were at our door taping him the 27th of December. And the 28th, people started bringing items to our house, including cash in our mailbox. Good luck, God bless you. So we Had a concert that raised $20,000 the next week, and we raised over $100,000, and we both went there to do what we could to help out in January. And we formed a nonprofit and go just about every year to continue our efforts to rebuild medically, but more now in education and people with disabilities. There were villages every few kilometers that needed help, and as we went down the coast, we had medical supplies with us, simple medical supplies, and we would try to find someone who would be the conduit to give these out to the people there, all the way down the coast for days. But when I got home, I said to him, we can't help all these villages. And it was very hard for me to narrow down to say, let's work with this village and these schools and not the others, because it was, if you give everyone a penny, it won't go very far. But if you focus your pennies in a few places, it will make a difference. That was very hard for me to say, we're not going back here, we'll go here and go here every year. It kind of broke my heart not to be able to do it for everyone, but it wouldn't make a difference if we didn't focus well on a few places. John Paul Getty says, find a need and fill it, and you'll be a wealthy man. Well, that's nice, the money's great, but I'm sure you know the story of the starfish on the beach. The little girl or boy, I like to think of a girl because it's a girls' school, women's school, walking on the beach, was picking up starfish and throwing them back into the ocean. And a man walking by said, what are you doing? And you're not making a difference because there are hundreds of starfish on thousands of miles of beach. You're not making a difference at all. And she picked up one more starfish and threw it back into the ocean and said, I made a difference to that one. So we can't all save the world, but we can grow where we're planted and do the best we possibly can for others, because we're blessed. About 20 years ago, one of our daughters, Namali, was getting married, and I was trying to decide what to give her. And I didn't want to give her china or silverware. I wanted to give her something else. And I saw a magazine that said Quilt in a Day. And I thought, oh, I could do that. Well, a year later, I finished her quilt with fabric that I recruited from her aunts and uncles and cousins in Sri Lanka and in Canada and Kentucky, where she went to school, and incorporated all that fabric into her quilt. And that started me on the path of quilting. The quilting that involved other people started the night after Sandy Hook. I thought, I'm going to make a quilt for each of those 26 families, the 20 children and the 6 educators. And then I realized this was a very big job. So I put a word out to my Haiti volunteer sewers, and within 3 days, it had, by a very circuitous route, wound up on the Channel 3 morning news. And within a couple of weeks, ladies came to my house 3 and 4 and 5 times a week, and we recruited people who didn't sew. People wanted to do anything to help, and these ladies who were strangers wanted to stay together, so we formed a nonprofit called Quilts To Heal. We found anything we could to represent those children, and for people who came from Massachusetts, New York, and all through Connecticut for months to create these. They would bring clippings from other states, other parts of the state, newspaper clippings. Some people knew someone who knew the family and found out little pieces of information. So the 80 plus blocks that were in each family's quilt very much represented everything about that little boy or girl or teacher. People ask why you take perfectly good pieces of fabric and cut them apart. Beautiful, expensive fabric. Why do you cut it apart? But it's a piecing together that creates something new, creates something unique, and allows you to, as you're stitching and sewing and designing, perhaps think about who is going to receive this. So, what is a quilt? It's a patchwork of love. But as you're working with it, you're kind of fondling the fabric, you're rearranging, you're designing, and even though we now don't necessarily know who is going to receive this, we know someone who's in need. We mostly gather now at a quilt shop in Simsbury, but the fabric is mostly in my house, which is called Fabric Central. A lot of donated fabric, other than monetary donations. Rely on a team of fabulous, committed, wonderful, devoted, talented ladies. The Haiti project that I'm involved with is creating diapers and baby beds and christening gowns and maternity jumpers and a few other things for the mothers and babies. It's called the Mothers and Babies Project for the Haitian Health Foundation. They do building, they do a lot of teaching. The Haitian Health Foundation reaches out for donations to buy goats for some of the people to help sustain them. Our part is to make these items. They don't have throwaway disposable diapers, so we make cloth diapers which are washed in the river. Yeah, different world than the United States for sure. The baby beds are basically just a pad with several layers where the baby lays rather than laying in the dirt. So it's very basic needs. We have shipped maybe 20,000 items in the last 13 years, all made by volunteers. Faith is a soft place to land when the world isn't kind to you. So you have to find some place inside of yourself, with someone else, with our Creator, that helps you know that you are more than who you are. You're part of society, part of life, part of the world, and need to know that you're important in that part of the world. One of my favorite books is A Little Engine That Could. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. So even though life is sometimes challenging, just push yourself and you probably will get to the point saying, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could.